Time for another City of Boca's podcast series, Boca Behind the Scenes. I'm Dean Muccio here on Boca Chamber Radio. I want to welcome Susan Saxton, who is the city clerk here in Boca. Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dean.
Make sure you guys get up close to the microphone because I want to make sure everybody hears you. Mary Siddons is here as well, the records manager. Hi, Mary.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Sure. Glad to have you here. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things, but I want to focus now on Susan and give us a little background on how long you've been with the city. What's it been like? Have you had fun?
Of course I've had fun. Been with the city since 2006, and I've been city clerk since 2009. So I'm coming up on, 12 years.
You've been here a while.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great to hear. I've met a lot of employees with the city who their tenure's been really long, and that's great. I love hearing that. Mary, tell us about you.
I've been with the city for about 10 years. I started as a dispatcher with 911 and then transitioned over to the city clerk's office.
That's quite a transition.
It is.
I was, just not to talk about me, but I was a 911 dispatcher, police, fire, and rescue.
Were you really?
And then I became a police officer and a deputy sheriff. So, that's a really interesting job, but the interesting transition.
It's a different kind of excitement.
Right. All right, so let's talk about the city clerk's role and the role that you play, Susan, in municipal elections. Elections will be coming up here.
Yes, they will. What's coming up this August are the primaries for the November election, and that election in August will be run by the Supervisor of Elections of Palm Beach County. In March of each year, there's something called the Uniform Municipal Elections, and that's when all the cities in Palm Beach County have their elections for their local representatives, their council members and mayors. But because of certain circumstances that happened this year, we're having a special election, and it's going to be concurrent with the August primary. So that makes my role a little bit different.
So you work closely with the supervisor of elections?
Always. Even in municipal elections, when we do more of the election work than we will be doing in August, we have an agreement with the supervisor of elections to use her voting equipment and do all the vote processing. For the August election, that of course will be the same thing because the supervisor is the one with all that equipment.
Sure.
But she also will be doing the required advertising. She'll be hiring the poll workers and getting the polling locations, which are things that we would normally do in the March election.
Mary, how does your role as records manager play into the city and elections and moving forward?
Well, of course, if we have any requests regarding the elections, we provide the response documents. But I also work closely with Susan Saxton and the Deputy City Clerk Diane King to help run the elections, and we help with recruiting the poll workers when we handle that for the March election, and we oversee their training, and we actually go out to all the polling locations on election day to make sure everything is running smoothly.
So talk about what goes into running an election. That's a big undertaking each and every election year.
It definitely is. And again, for the March elections is when we do the most work. So it starts probably towards the end of November, the beginning of December of the year prior. We do a notice of election. Then we post information on our website that tells candidates when they can qualify. For our March elections, our qualifying period is the first 7 business days of January. After all the candidates have qualified, we then have to start looking at polling locations. Now, the polling locations usually are the same from year to year, and we work closely with the Supervisor of Elections of Palm Beach County to get those polling locations.
How many I'm sorry to interrupt
that's okay.
you, but how many locations is there?
We have 26 locations within the city of Boca Raton, and that encompasses 38 different precincts. Not quite sure how many there are countywide, but I think we have the second largest number of precincts of municipalities in the county.
Poll workers. How do you get the poll workers? Is this a volunteer, paid?
No, it's a paid position.
Okay.
And again, we do work with the supervisor of elections because she has requirements for their training. They must go through training in order to work in any election. So we have a list of poll workers that we have used in the past, that also the supervisor of elections has used in the past. We send out letters to them, asking them if they're going to be working for us again this year, and then follow up with a lot of phone calls to make sure that whether they are or not, if we haven't gotten a response. And then usually there are, how many, Mary, that you think we might have to get new each year because people, for whatever reason, they don't want to work anymore?
We generally have about 200 poll workers in election, and we may have to change out 20 to 30 depending on availability. And of course, for an election in August, the supervisor of elections is going to have to do a little work because a lot of folks aren't down here in the middle of the summer. So.
Right. So snowbirds
Some of them are, I think.
Yes.
are part of the elections here.
Correct.
Because of how long they're a resident here?
Well, they have to establish their residency in Florida to
Sure.
be able to vote.
So we have paid positions for the volunteers. I'm sorry. They're not volunteers. Paid positions
Right,
for the poll
exactly.
workers. Thank you very much. How many registered voters do we have now?
In the city of Boca Raton, as of March this year, of March 2018, there were just over 64,000 registered voters. Countywide, there are a lot more than that, but we have a population of probably somewhere around 90,000 and then 64,000 plus registered voters.
As far as the turnout over the past elections, how has that looked over the past couple of elections that you supervised?
Well, for the March elections, unfortunately, the turnout is usually fairly low.
Yeah.
We certainly would hope that people would come out and vote, including in the upcoming election this August. But for instance, we just had an election in March of 2018, and only about just under 15% of the electorate voted in that election. So there were 9,500 ballots cast in that election. The previous year, there was a little bit of a more contentious race going on. So in March of 2017, just under 12,000 people voted. So that was a turnout of over 18%. Which is pretty good for our municipal elections, sadly.
Can either one of you talk about early voting? How does that work? And as far as registering to vote?
Well, early voting is done usually just for the primaries and the November election, because in state statute that's required. We don't do it for our municipal elections. It's an expensive proposition, and because it's not that hard to vote on election day, just locally, and there are not that many people that go to the polls, we don't do early voting. But this August, early voting for the primary election will begin on Monday, August 13th, and it'll run through Sunday, August 26th. And in Boca Raton, you will be able to do your early voting at the downtown library, which is at 400 Northwest 2nd Avenue. The polls during early voting are going to be open from 10 in the morning until 6 in the afternoon every day. There will be other locations countywide that those will be posted on the Supervisor of Elections website.
We're talking with Susan Saxton, City Clerk, and Mary Siddons, the Records Manager for the City of Boca. It's a new podcast series that we've got going on, Boca Behind the Scenes, and you're listening to it on Boca Chamber Radio. What will we be voting on? What's on the ballot on August 28th?
There are 2 city races on the ballot, but there are a number of other things. You're going to be voting in primary elections for U.S. Senator, for U.S. Congress, for the governor and some other statewide offices, for state Senate, state House representatives, and also in some county commission primaries. And then as I said, Boca will have a race for the mayor's seat and for council seat A. And two other municipalities will also be having ballot questions. So it'll be a fairly long ballot.
Mary, what's some of the challenges around elections and handling everything that goes into putting together an election, making sure things run correctly? What frequently asked questions that you get, or some of the challenges?
The biggest challenge I think we have is finding qualified poll workers that are available to work for the polls. As Susan said, they have to attend a training that's conducted by the supervisor of elections. They're paid for that training.
Is that like a one day, a few hours? Okay.
Depending on their position at the polls, it can be part of the day. For clerks who have the head position at each precinct, it's almost an all-day training. They do get reimbursed for attending the training as long as they show up on election day, which they are also paid for. But now election day is a very long day. Because our voting is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., obviously they have to show up at their precincts prior to the polls opening.
Sure.
And then they have to stay later to finish up and get all of the equipment together. So it's a long day. They are paid for it, though, and we think it's a great public service. We would like to encourage more people to fill out the form for the supervisor of election. They have to apply with the supervisor of election and be approved through them so that we can use them. We also like
Susan is showing us a poster here.
Yeah, we've been trying to publicize, to put out the information to encourage people to become a poll worker. One of the frequent questions we have is how people register to vote and where is their precinct. So we want to encourage people to register to vote if they currently are not. The last day to register to vote in the August 28th election is Monday, July 30th. They have to register to vote through the supervisor of elections. They have an application on the website. They can print that out. They can mail it to the supervisor of elections or bring it to any of the supervisor of elections office. The closest one is in Delray Beach. It's the Southeast County Administrative Complex at 345 Congress Avenue, room 103. So we would like to have as many people vote as possible, and if they haven't registered yet, we'd like to encourage them to do so.
And all this information as far as elections, getting registered or poll workers, is on the website?
Yeah, you can. There are links on the City of Boca Raton website, and that's myboca.us. But you can also go directly to the supervisor's website, and that is pbcelections.org.
Okay.
And Mary mentioned people asking about where their precinct is. There is a precinct finder on the Supervisor of Elections website. So all you would need is your address, and you can find out where you vote if you don't know that.
Lots of great information. Great meeting, both of you. Any final words on election and the election process? I think we covered just about everything.
Yeah, I think we did, Dean. We really would just like to encourage people to get out and vote. We'd love to see the percentages higher than they are.
Absolutely.
But I don't think that's just a Boca Raton problem or a Florida problem. I kind of think it's a nationwide problem.
I think you're right. Well, it's nice meeting you. Susan Saxton, City Clerk, and Mary Siddons with the Records Department, Records Manager for the City of Boca. And our new podcast series, Boca Behind the Scenes. You get to meet employees, put a voice with the job, and thank them for their services, because, you go by the city building out there and you go, I know there's really important people doing a lot of important work in there. So it's great to meet both of you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
I'm Dean Mucho here on Boca Chamber Radio.